Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is Roxanne Layton, a member of Mannheim Steamroller, performing this weekend at Hansher Auditorium in Iowa City. Roxanne, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Uh, those of us in the Midwest, and particularly around this corner of Eastern Iowa, are very familiar with the Mannheim Steamroller. This was a place where those of us of a certain age remember the original Old Home Bread commercials with C.W. McCall and the big hit in the 70s that Mannheim Steamroller founder Chip Davis was responsible for, along with the actor and composer Bill Fries, that in essence provided the money for him to create the band and make the recordings. And then, of course, in the mid 80s, releasing the very first Christmas album that really kind of turned the entire Christmas music industry on its head. But before we get to that, tell me a little bit about yourself. You play a recorder and also percussion in the band. Tell me a little bit about Roxanne's musical journey.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I've been playing the recorder, of which people don't know is actually quite a serious instrument, especially in Europe, since I was 6 years old, so for quite a while. And I went to New England Conservatory for recorder performance, studying medieval Renaissance Baroque music. Also percussion, timpani, electronic drums. I played jazz drums for a bit in New Orleans for about 5 years. Went to an amazing high school with jazz musicians. Wynton Marsalis, Ellis Marsalis was our teacher. Branford Marsalis was there, Donald Harrison, Terrence Blanchard. We were all in the same class. So that was a really beautiful moment in my life. So I have some jazz influence, and I do play Latin jazz and folk, and with a whole bunch of people out on the East Coast.
You mentioned that recorder is not an instrument in American music that we see a lot of, more so in Europe. I think that most people's experience with a recorder is, a little bit in elementary school sometimes, and then either put it away or graduate to a different instrument. Why did you stick with it?
Well, my father was making a sailboat to go around the world on a 72-foot schooner, and wanted me to have a portable instrument. And to this day, every time I go to a gig, I thank him. Thank you, Dad. And then I took up the drums, and so that kind of kiboshed that whole thing. But
Well, I think we could spend hours here, because going to the New Orleans Performing Arts High School with Ellis Marsalis and the Marsalis boys and all of that, round the world sailing. I would love to get into all that, but we should probably talk Mannheim Steamroller. You have been a part of this band for nearly 30 years.
Yeah, 27 years. It's a really cool story, actually, how Chip and I met, if you'd like to hear it. Okay, so 1991, Mannheim Steamroller came through Boston area, and I, at that time, was making recorders, professional recorders, like $4,000 recorders, in a shop. And someone gave me a Fresh Air 3 tape that I listened to, and everything that you'll hear happened within 24 hours. So I was listening to the radio, and they said next caller wins tickets to tonight's performance of Mannheim Steamroller. So I thought, oh, I really love this, recorders, Renaissance music, and rock and roll, everything that I love. So I called, I won tickets. Next thing you know, because we hire an orchestra in every town, the trumpet player that I didn't know came in to the shop, said, oh, I'm here for a second. I have to go back to rehearsal for Mannheim. And I said, oh my gosh, I just won tickets. And he said, well, come with me. And I went with them to the rehearsal, and they said, come back later. And I went back that night. It was a Friday night. Met Chip, showed him the instruments that I made. And he said, what? You're a drummer and a recorder player? I never find anyone like that. And showed me his instruments that he and his dad made. We ended up talking till 2 a.m. In the hallway of the hotel, just about life and all the instruments and everything. And the next day he called me and said, I happened to give him, I think, a tape of my conservatory recital. The next day he calls and said, do you want to come back and go backstage and hear the concert? I was like, yeah. And we met earlier, and he said, I'd like for you to be on the next album. All of this happened in 24 hours. So pretty much changed my life that moment.
So let's see. So 1991, what was your first album that you were on then?
It was part of the day part series. So dinner, Sunday morning coffee, party. He did music for different parts of the day. So sent someone to Boston. I hired an orchestra. We recorded it, and then it just went from there. And that was in '91, and we became fast friends. So did a couple albums until 1995, when he said, "Would you like to be the new member of Mannheim Steamroller?"
And have you pretty much been a part of every tour since?
Every tour. We've only missed two years, and that was when we had one band and Chip had to get his hip replaced, and then COVID 2 years ago.
So you said that was when we had one band. Some years ago, the band split in two to cover more ground, and I think we're seeing the Green Band, right?
We are the Green Band.
Yeah, the Green Band.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I can't,
the red
keep track. Yes, we're green.
the red band and the green. It sounds like you probably have played in both.
I have not played in the red band. So we had a band before the red that was at Branson for a while, doing a whole Christmas, I think 5 or 6 weeks of Christmas there in Branson, Missouri, and then graduated to having two bands to cover the whole country in 6 weeks.
So when you began, you were with the, what I kind of think of as the original Mannheim Steamroller lineup. Chip Davis, of course. Jackson Berkey was the co-founder. Did a lot of the arranging and played all the keyboards and stuff. And then as time has gone by, they don't tour with the band as much. So tell me what's changed over the years as you've had to orient new musicians to the band.
Well, we do have Becky Kia Mills, who's been with us, I think, 20 years now. She played in the orchestra before that we would hire, and then became the violin soloist after Arnie Roth. Then we have Logan Pennington, whose dad, Chuck Pennington, was the conductor for the larger orchestras that we would, when we toured the big arenas that we hired. And so he's second generation Mannheim Steamroller member, amazing drummer. And so the three of us have been the core for a long time. And then we've had couple of different keyboard players. Ron Cooley just retired from the band a couple years ago. So we have Tom Vitaco from Chicago, Paul Metzebaugh from Chicago, and Ed Berry from Omaha playing all the other instruments.
Has the show changed at all over the years?
A little bit. I mean, we're still playing all the wonderful music that Chip wrote, and we always include some Fresh Air series songs. I think we have 3 songs this year that we're playing. Some great, amazing music. Yeah, so I mean, we're still playing. We have laser lights. We've got tons of fog and laser and a video screen behind us. So it's kind of a multimedia performance. Yeah.
Going back for just a minute to kind of the beginning, because you talked about how when you first heard the Fresh Air, that the kind of mixing up the classical and rock and roll forms was interesting, probably because we both grew up with all those different kinds of music. There have been that has now migrated to other bands, other styles of music, other Christmas shows. But what is it that makes Mannheim Steamroller still kind of special and the leading one?
Well, he took the name Mannheim Steamroller. It really does move forward. He has these synth patches and rock and roll beats that just push forward. I mean, it really does feel like a steamroller. I mean, no one else I know is doing what we're still doing, which is mixing early music instruments. You still hear harpsichord, which is a big sound all through Mannheim Steamroller, guitar, lute, the mixture of instruments, including recorder, which Chip he wrote a lot for recorder, is one of his favorite instruments. So to have recorder as the lead on the melody, a lot of the time, very different. Sometimes when I'm playing in front of thousands of people, I'm like, wait a second, am I playing the melody here? This is amazing. So I think it's that. I don't know if people know the why he calls it Mannheim Steamroller, but I can tell you Mannheim, a town in Germany, was famous in the 1750s for an orchestra that it's famous for crescendoing, for building together. And so he kind of Americanized that concept and put Mannheim and then of course Steamroller to put that name forward to which is the sound. Plus we have an orchestra. So it's kind of synth, electronic, yet we have a Renaissance section once in a while, with beautiful drums playing. I play timpani, electronic drums, so I fill in all the other parts. I think it's just a different sound than like a heavily produced, sound that you hear out there. Yeah. And I mean, they couldn't find a bin for us in Tower Records. There's no genre really. It's like 18th century rock and roll, maybe. Yeah, sure.
When I interviewed Chip back in the day, he would tell the story about how he would shop the original Fresh Air stuff to record companies, and he'd call up the record company industry, rep, and they'd say, no, it just doesn't fit any place. We can't do anything with it. But could I get a couple of copies? Because I'd like to get them to my friends because I really like it. And I would say that now, nearly 40 years gone, it's still the same as it's always been. All right, Roxanne, hardest question I'm going to ask you. What's your favorite moment in the show?
Oh, that is really hard. Well, there is this moment, and it's how Chip arranged "Oh Holy Night," where I'm playing bells and the French horns come in and the strings come in. And I don't know how many times I've played it in 27 years. I literally still tear up at this moment where he builds it up and the French horns come in. It surrounds me and I'm playing the melody on the bell with the violin and I get chills, and it's in the middle of "Oh Holy Night." I'll just be honest.
I have also been listening to these songs for decades, and I still get chills. "Oh Holy Night," "Silent Night," a couple others.
Silent Night.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other arrangement like Silent Night the way he did it. And people, we do autograph lines and we get to meet people. We haven't done it in a couple of years, but they tell us how important Silent Night is to them in their lives. Either they played it for their father's funeral, or while someone is sick in the hospital, or even just to celebrate the Christmas spirit in their home. So we hear it firsthand.
Mannheim Steamroller performing at Hancher Auditorium in Iowa City. 2 shows on Saturday, the 19th. There are still tickets available for each show. You can get those at hancher.uiowa.edu. Roxanne, this has been a huge treat for me to get to talk about one of my favorite things, the Mannheim Steamroller, and that great story. And it's great to meet you over Zoom. And I think you're really going to enjoy Hancher Auditorium. It's a fabulous performance space. I know you're in Dubuque right now as we're taping this. You're going to perform at the Five Flags Center. And just thank you for being in Iowa, and hope you have a fun weekend.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio many weekdays at 10:30, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture, or however you get your podcasts. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.